welcome to Matushka and me.
Hello.
You might wonder why we have this lovely pot full of dirt and stick.
A lovely stick that I just watered 3 times, I think. Maybe 4. I don't know, lost count.
In fact, there is a reason for this. It is reminiscent of one of my favorite stories from the Desert Fathers. We just set this beautiful stick down here. Here, you're going to hold it
while you talk.
One of my favorite stories is an episode in the life of St. John Kolovos, or the dwarf, and in which there was the elder at the monastery that gave him an obedience. And the obedience was, here, take this stick, go and plant it in the ground, and water it every day until it bears fruit.
3 times.
Right. Now, this seemed like a ridiculous thing to anything. I got this stick from the ground. It had been laying on the ground for the Lord only knows how long, probably weeks and weeks and weeks. It's dried up.
It's pretty dried out.
No life in it. It's basically kindling for fire.
Yeah.
And this is much like what was the obedience given to St. John. But instead of any thought entering his mind of saying, oh, this is ridiculous, this is silly, St. John immediately went, planted the stick into the ground, and began watering it.
Right.
And he watered it for a long, long time. It's told in the episode of the life of St. John that he watered that stick every single day for 3 years. 3 years. Every single day he watered it.
Is that why you had me water it 3 times?
Maybe. But the truth is, as it gets into the story, that after 3 years of watering every day, it began to bud, and it actually grew fruit on it. and the elder picked the fruit that had given this obedience to St. John. He took it to the church, and he told the brethren, come and eat of the fruit of obedience.
That's right.
So this might seem like a outstanding story, but I think there are many things about this story that are not just left to the fantastical, but I think are applicable for us. Because what does it teach us? The point of this story is not that St. John watered a stick necessarily. The point is that he, in obedience, did something that most people would consider completely absurd and not worth the time, by the way, not worth the time. And yet, it was his obedience that essentially affected the miracle. He didn't question. It says in the account that he didn't even question this. He just went and planted the stick. Why do I like this story so much? Well, in a way, it's because I relate to that. Even though Matushka and I have been in our ministry for such a short period of time, I was only ordained in 2013, I largely relate to stories like this, especially the one of St. John, because there have been not a few times in the life of our ministry when I think people thought we were watering a stick.
Yep.
And they were wondering, Father Alexis, what exactly what are you doing there? And so I relate to that because, well, I know I'm watering a stick, frankly, but I understand the value of obedience, even if it seems something to be, to most people, silly or absurd. And so, we've kind of gotten used to it. The fact that we drive over 1,000 miles to serve several different communities across the state of Mississippi, it doesn't seem silly to us. It seems really amazing. And yes, it does seem a bit like watering a stick. But if we've learned anything from the Holy Fathers and Holy Mothers, is that obedience really wins the grace of God.
That's right.
And so I don't mind a little bit of obedience. I don't mind a lot of obedience, especially if, St. John can, through his obedience, show the fruit of obedience, right?
That's right.
But, speaking of what it's like to be, introduced to interesting scenarios, because we've had a lot in our life. That reminds me, we've had not just interesting scenarios in the church, but also we've had a few of interesting scenarios in our own lives. I'm kind of reminded of a time in life when Matushka was in college, and she had this very interesting college professor.
Quirky.
Let's call him quirky. Okay, quirky. But I think he was obviously, very, in a way, brilliant.
Very much so.
He wasn't just purely quirky and he wasn't without his brilliance. No. And yet, in situations like this, is much like the situation we see with the Desert Fathers, it's hard to see sometimes that virtue. It's hard to see that virtue. But what reminded me of this is because Matushka and I, in a very real way, are in the ministry together. Of course, I'm a priest, but Matushka shares in the priestly ministry with me in the sense that, we're married and we work into this vocation together. That's right. I mean, that's just literally why Matushka is named Matushka, right? Right? Why the church honors the wife of the priest with a title, because it has a significance to it. It's not just the fact that we're married, She's not just simply my wife, although, she is my amazing 3/4 wife. Better 3/4, right? But, with this professor, it reminded me, related to what we're kind of talking about today, that, you had an interesting role as a student in this class. And what exactly was that with this professor that was kind of quirky but brilliant?
Right. So sometimes other students would ask questions relating to what he was teaching. And sometimes he didn't always quite understand what they were asking. And so I would sometimes, it was just a matter of rephrasing what they were saying. And then he's like, oh, okay. And then the answer would come about for the students. So we always had this kind of, we've always had this kind of like play almost. Because someone would ask a question and sometimes he'd kind of like look kind of funny. Like he didn't quite understand what the question was. And I'm like, well, I just rephrase it. Like I said, just rephrase it, kind of put it into, I don't know, just so that they could understand what he was saying, what the student was saying, what the teacher was saying, and then, it was almost like that light bulb. It's like, oh, I get what you're saying.
Matushka was like a translator of sorts. Yeah, she was like translator. You've always been good with people in that way, I think. And I'm sure there are times when, the professor was making some comment and perhaps you got it, that he was saying, but the people in the class didn't quite understand what the professor was getting at,
Right.
And
and that's how most of the questions came up, is they didn't always understand what he was saying.
Right. And so you were like this kind of translator in between the two.
Yeah.
Well, what made me think of that is that even in the short time in our ministry, of course, so it's 2021. I'm going to be celebrating my priestly ordination soon in July, the anniversary of that. But it reminds me, throughout the life of our short ministry, Matushka has in some ways also functioned like a translator. And this, to be honest, isn't that uncommon for Matushki in the world. Believe it or not. You might think, well, quirky Father Alexis, and this is, Matushka, doing, but actually, this is a lot more common in the priestly world. The Matushka is like a little bit of a translator between the priest and the congregation. So it's not always the case, but it's a lot more common than you would think. So, having said that, I think we want to get on with the topic of what we decided to talk about today, right? I've presented it in this way, and that is Ode to Matushki, right? If we were more technologically advanced, we would have like an extra screen there. Ode to Matushki, right? So I wanted to make a short video about this, as kind of like a tribute to some of the great unsung heroes of our parishes and communities in the Orthodox world, Matushki, right? It's really interesting how little we tend to hear from Matushki. Of course, that I think is a testimony to their awesomeness, because Matushki do a lot of work behind the scenes. That's right. And I don't think that my impression of the many Matushki that I've met is that they don't desire any attention. They would rather do the work behind the scenes.
I do like that, actually.
Yeah. I think many
I don't know if all Matushki are like that, but
I think many of them are. But regardless of whether many are or not, it's, I think, very appropriate for us to point out their contribution and, to kind of offer a tribute to them and a thanks for them. And so kind of in honor of Matushki everywhere in the world, I thought a good topic today would be for Matushka to talk just a little bit about being a Matushka, and some of the really great things about it, because we don't always get to hear from the Matushki. And the funny thing is, this is another thing people don't realize. You actually hear from them a lot more than you think. Because 7 out of 10 times if your priest is saying something, I guarantee you it's also his Matushka saying something. A little secret there. Remember,
for the most part,
they live together. Okay? So, I don't know what to say. I mean...
We do talk about things. Not everything.
Yeah, stuff. We talk about stuff. Not everything, but stuff. Everything. Right? So, it's relatedly, it's like sometimes people have said, like, well, why aren't there more women in the Bible? Why didn't more women write things in the Bible? It occurred to me a long time ago that, anytime, for instance, like the Annunciation, no one was there. Listen, folks. No one was there. It was the Theotokos, right? And the Archangel Gabriel. Okay? So, who do you think gave the account of the Annunciation? It was a woman. Yeah, it was the Theotokos. It had to be. Yeah. Right? Nobody was there. So when people say, like, I wish women, wrote, but it's like, they did. They did. And I think that's important to acknowledge the behind the scenes that Matushki do. I'm telling you, most of the time if your priest is saying something, it's also coming from the Matushka. All right? It's coming from the Matushka too. So without further ado, I think it would be good to start off with just maybe a few things that are maybe a little bit challenging about being a Matushka. And then we can, Matushka Veronika can talk about some things that are really awesome about being a Matushka. All right? So let's start off with the challenging things. Okay. What are some challenging things about being Matushka?
I think probably the first and foremost challenging thing that we have to do as Matushki is really try and find a balance between kind of balancing the family life and balancing the church life. I think there's a lot that goes along with, especially enduring, with your kids and going to all the different services and, really getting to know your community and engaging with them and kind of, trying to balance all of that without getting too, just too run down. I think that's a big challenge. You want two?
Yeah. Okay. Well, with that first challenge, of course, with that first challenge, you're right about that balance, but, you want your, look, our kids are kids. They're still kids. They're priest kids, but they're still kids. Okay? So we want to find that balance and, Matushka, Father Alexis, right? She's Matushka, I'm a priest. But, we're also a man and a woman, We're also a married couple, right? Those things don't cease to exist, And so...
We have to wear lots of hats sometimes, I feel like. I've got the mom hat, I got the Matushki hat, I got the wife hat, I got my hat...
I've got this hat. Originally, my idea for the opening for this one is to have a bunch of hats on and just take them off and talk about the different things we do. But I thought that's a bit much. I don't want to do the overkill. We're only like 7 videos into this, and I don't want to it to turn into like Matushka and me in hats or something, right? I mean, not that hats are bad. I mean, obviously, but
it would have been a fun prop. We do have lots of, but we already had a very nice.
Yeah, we had a good
prop. Yes,
but
this was very nice. Our little stick, watering stick.
Yeah, this is a great image also of the priesthood right here, and the life of the Matushki. It's like watering a stick. This is the balance of family right now, watering a stick. Right? No, but in all seriousness, I think you're right. We really have to have that balance because even Father Addy would say this, that you have to let your kids have to be free to be kids, right? Yeah. That doesn't mean anything bad or negative. It just means that sometimes we put the inappropriate expectations on people that are in certain situations, or in certain vocations in the church, right? Like, look, my kids didn't get ordained, okay? And yet, they're my kids, and I'm a priest. And it's really, it's challenging. You can't kind of like completely remove the expectations that PKs have. You just can't. You can't eradicate it. It's just something that's ingrained in some folks. But you do the best that you can, and I think one way is, like you were saying, to find that balance. You got to find that balance between church and family life. Yeah. At the same time, listen, not to brag about my kids, but they go to every service. Until COVID. Yeah. Until COVID, and then what can I say? It was a good streak. It's a good streak.
Yeah.
But
interesting year.
But no, you just. And the way that you find that balance too is, you do the best that you can.
Yes.
At the same time, you have to cultivate things at home. People, I think, sometimes are really, 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 really concerned that, well, if I make my kid go to the church service, if I make my family do that, make, okay, that's a legitimate concern. But the way that you cut through that concern is you don't start there.
That's right.
You start way before that, you start somewhere else. You start at a different place, right? You don't start at, I'm forcing my kids to go to service. For us, look, yes, I'm a priest, so obviously I've got to be at the services. So obviously that kind of facilitates a certain routine in our lives. And yet, even before I was ordained, it was very clear, from the beginning of our marriage, that we had set out that church is at the core of who we are as a family.
That's right.
And now I realize that some people are in situations where not everybody in their family is Orthodox.
That's true.
And I think this presents another unique challenge that you have to go to.
That's hard.
So, and I think that's certainly something we can speak about, in other podcasts or things like this. But for this one, we're merely talking more about the fact that, Matushka and me and, our families and how we navigate that. So finding that balance is a good one. What's the second kind of challenge?
I guess the second challenge would be to know when to listen and when to speak sometimes with people. Sometimes people will come and they will want to talk to me.
Sometimes.
Yeah, I know. A lot of the time.
We're not just talking about church people either. Matushka she has one of those amazing faces where it just says, "Come and talk to me in the middle of the grocery store."
It's happened several times.
Several times. That's generous. Once a week, more like it. Once a week. Anyway, go ahead, Matushka.
But sometimes, people will, they say, okay, I need your advice, and then they'll start talking. And then sometimes they'll start talking, and then they're like, okay, thanks very much, I get it, I know what to do. And I'm like, okay. So those are kind of easy, but sometimes, people, they come up to me and they just kind of start talking, and I'm like, I could give you some advice. I don't know, what you could, so sometimes it's hard to figure out, what people actually really need. I find a lot of the time actually people just need somebody to listen to them and kind of be encouraging, and not necessarily so, solution driven. which is kind of hard for me because I'm one of those people. If people come to me and they have a problem, I just want to fix it. It's kind of hard.
We were just talking about this the other day.
We were. I was just gonna say we just had this conversation.
You and I. It's funny because we do have
doers.
Yeah, we do have different personalities, and that's we've known that for as long as we've known each other. But one major intersect for us in our personalities is that I was telling you the other day.
Yeah.
We both are like fireman personalities. Yeah. We're the kind of people where it's like, we see danger and we just run right to it immediately. That's our natural response, like a fireman runs into a burning building. Some people see a burning building and they go the other way, or they gather together, or they try to make things calm and organized. Matushka and I, we're firemen. We're firemen. Run right into the building because there's probably somebody in there and they need help. That's how we are. Like you said, we're doers.
Yeah. I'm very. That's how I'm minded, though. Too. I do a lot of troubleshooting. I'm constantly troubleshooting things that are going around.
It's true.
Putting out the little fires, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's I think especially for me, I can't speak for all Matushki, but that's definitely a thing for myself. So
I think those are really good. I mean, thank you, Matushka, for sharing. Those are challenges. What are some of the really awesome things, or some fun things, or just some really positive things that you love about being a Matushka? Yeah. Besides your husband.
Yeah. You're just great. Even though...
Well, you are my better 3/4, so I'm a little bit of a disadvantage there. Yeah.
Although it's kind of I guess it's kind of almost like a double-edged sword. Although I like people I sometimes have trouble with people talking with me. I love talking with people, and kind of learning about them, and kind of their journey towards Orthodoxy, or just what's going on in their life, and kind of building a community with them is a lot. It's been a lot of fun. We've done a lot of just getting to know people and kind of in their journey. It's been a really, really great blessing for us.
We've known each other for so long. One of the things that's been awesome to see, develop in you is that kind of seedling that, early on in our knowing each other, we both kind of, I think, shared with each other, because we're high school sweethearts, and so we've known each other a long time. Matushka and I have always had, I think, even before we knew each other, even when we were young, we always really had a desire to be parents. You always wanted to be a mother. I always wanted to be a father, even when we were little kids. I mean, that was one of our, heart's desire. And so it's really been awesome to see kind of you grow into that role, not just as a mother of children, but also a mother of communities as a Matushki, as a Matushka rather. And that's part of it, right? Is to because the truth is, you're an introvert, actually.
I really am.
And I'm more of an extrovert. There's this weird term, ambivert, which is actually what I am. It's probably just nonsense, but, when I'm around people, I get energized.
Yeah.
But, I'm going to tell you the truth. When I get home and I'm, out in the country, I don't want to see people. I don't want to hear people. I don't want to hear vehicles. I don't want nothing. I want peace and quiet. I don't want nobody bother me. No cell phones, nothing. I'm actually glad I get one bar in the country, because then nobody's going to call me. No internet, no text or whatever. I'm very much like that a lot of the time, which sounds so strange, because when I'm out in public, when I'm with people, I am so energized. I'm really energized by that. So, I don't know. I found that term ambivert online somewhere. Like I said, it's probably just nonsense. But you're definitely more of an introvert.
I told somebody the other day that I was an introvert, and they're like, "Well, you're hiding it really well." I'm like, "Thanks. I love it."
This should have been on. She's like, "What choice do I have? I married an extrovert, right?"
I know. I was like, I know. I just,
Yeah.
But if I'm out and about with people, and I'm very chatty with people.
Yeah.
I like talking with people, but after that, I'm just like, I need to be alone for a minute.
You're like a social chameleon, to be honest.
A little bit,
you're like a social chameleon, to be honest. You blend in with the group really, really well. You do. So
yes,
you really do.
Yeah.
So I think that's awesome to share that. What are some other things you love about being Matushka?
I guess I also like. There is kind of this, camaraderie with other Matushki and their families, and it's kind of nice to have that that community and that that support. Just getting to talk with other Matushki and. A lot of the times it's kind of like we're almost all saying the same thing sometimes. So
or presbytera.
Or presbytera.
Or panis. Or
Horias.
There's lots of different terms the church uses for priest's wife.
That's right.
Matushka is a Russian one. Presbytera is Greek.
Right.
Pani is a Carpatho-Ricen. The Antiochians use Horia.
Horia.
There's some other ones that please forgive me. I don't actually know them all. There's some Romanian term. There's a couple of others. So
that's nice to have that, just that knowledge of other women we're all kind of in this, boat together. And I think one other one that I could think of is, even, talking with people. Like I said, it's kind of a double-edged sword. I like talking with people, but watching them come and talk with me and kind of talk it through and having them come up with their own solutions sometimes, just because they're talking to me and kind of bouncing off of me, that is always something that I've enjoyed. Even as a music therapist, I get that a lot with some of my patients or my clients too. They just need somebody to kind of springboard with, I guess. And that's just been really great to kind of see that, natural growth for them.
So those are the three things, huh?
Yeah. I think 3 is good, right?
I think 3 is good. Well,
work, right?
I hear the clarion calls of little one in the night, so I'm gonna let Matushka, go work a little magic, and we'll finish up in here but it won't be much longer here. So I just wanted to say a few things in conclusion for our video today. And first of all is this particular little beauty here, this stick in soil, reminding us of St. John the Dwarf. It reminds me of a really great Pascha tradition that I love. Of course, it's Georgian, of course. But there's a tradition in Georgia where you take wheat grass seeds and you sprout them, and then you plant them. And this would be happening at about this time during the Paschal season. And you sprout them, and when they sprout, you plant them in some fresh soil, and they begin to grow and grow and grow, right? So you've got this nice little potted green wheatgrass coming up, right? And I guess in Georgia, this greenery, this new life symbolizes the resurrection. You put your red Pascha egg in there. You've got your little candle. It's a very beautiful tradition. I was blessed to go to Georgia, the Republic of Georgia, a few years back on a pilgrimage, and I happened to be there by God's grace during Bright Week. And so these Paschal traditions were on display. Basically, everywhere you went, people had little potted wheatgrass plants everywhere with their little red Pascha egg and a candle. It's a beautiful tradition. I even actually was able to pick up a crochet one, right? A crochet pot with a crochet like looking grass, green grass, and then crochet Pascha egg, and it had some foam inside of the Pascha egg, and you could stick a little candle on top. It was a little cute little gift that I was able to pick up. So remind me of that. It's one of my favorite traditions. It's very easy to sprout wheatgrass. You can find the directions online. So if you happen to have some lying around, you might give it a shot for that Paschal tradition, or maybe for next year. But I wanted to remind, speaking of Pascha, it's coming up. We're less than 2 weeks away from Holy Pascha. I want to remind everybody that we have our sweepstakes. Our sweepstakes. I always say that, man. Matushka's not around to correct me. It's a giveaway. So we have our giveaway, and that is we're asking that people would submit just maybe a brief voice recording of Christ is risen, either saying it or singing it. If you look in the description of the video that we have, you can send it to that email there, admin@orthodoxmississippi.org. And so we're going to be taking submissions for that. And whoever is decided to be the winner, like we said, we're going to play the recordings for our kids and let them decide. So it'll be impartial. And whoever wins that, we'll be sending them at our expense for shipping and handling, a mug or a Matushka and me shirt or something fun like that. So get those submissions in. We're going to be taking them until Pascha, and then shortly after Pascha, we'll announce the winner and we'll send out that gift to the winner of the giveaway. All right. So keep that in mind. Get them in. All right. God bless you guys. We'll see you next time, next video. All right. Bye.